Welcome, everyone. I hope you are all doing well today. All right, so let me make sure this. Okay, now I'm ready. I had to turn that off. It was in my ear, my own voice in my ear, and it would be a huge distraction. So here we go. So today this is related to the horrific tragedy, um, the four murders in Moscow, Idaho, and I want to talk about. Everybody is talking about it. It is a huge case that has captured the attention of so many people online. Um, and so I haven't really talked about it because we had the holidays and I was, out of pocket, very busy, doing what we do. And so I'd like to kind of step off into this now. I will be doing uh, covering this case um, quite a bit, but my first video related to it, I hope that we can talk a little bit about this in a way that may be a bit different than what some of the other channels are putting out there. Now, most of you already know, if you're on my channel, you know that I am, in fact, a clinical psychologist, and I work actively. I work in multiple settings throughout the city, and my hobby is abnormal psychology, forensics. I like breaking down trials in terms of testimony of witnesses, um, and this is the thing that I do as a hobby. So I sometimes my content may look a bit like speculation, and I do try to be responsible. And we do have Fridays wild speculation where we kind of really can go off into the conspiracy type things. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. It's not going to be conspiratorial in nature. It's really not really even theoretical. I mean, it's empirical. We got good information from profilers, the FBI, forensic psychologists doing the work and identifying personality factors, behavioral analysis of people that go from being innocent, taking a stepwise fashion into madness, where they then become Jeffrey Dahmer, your psychopathic killers, Nicholas Cruz, Ted Bundy, the Golden State Killer. So there are many. I want to be very, very clear. I do not do profiling as a job. I don't do that type of work. This is my hobby. Okay. All right. So the title today is A Trigger for Madness. And when I say a trigger for madness, I'm talking about the death of a little Australian shepherd. And let me. This is not the Australian shepherd. This is an Australian shepherd. And they are, in fact, magnificent creatures, and I have several of them myself. They are absolutely stunning in beauty, and their level of intelligence is absolutely amazing. And so I wanted you to have an idea when I talk about this. I wanted you to have an idea of just how really beautiful the pelt of these animals are. Um, they do come in different colors, but this is your stereotypical. This is a tricolor, but like I have one that is considered silver or blue, and she's just all gray and black. She's so pretty. My drover, who is my big male, he looks exactly like this baby. He's got the red markings and he has, a blue twinkle in his eye. So, so I wanted you to get a look at how, these are really magnificent creatures. And so when you hear this story that I'm about to tell you, it makes it all the more disturbing that someone willing, any person that would mangle, murder, abuse an animal are a special type of, monster. Um, but you can't, I was afraid. I wanted to show the Australian Shepherd because I was afraid people would say, oh, well, maybe the person that killed the Australian Shepherd, maybe they were afraid of him. Maybe they thought the dog was going to hurt them. Maybe this, maybe they thought the dog was a nuisance. And I wanted you to really see what an Australian Shepherd looks like before I tell you this story. Now, Buddy, who is what I think was the first victim of this psychopath in Moscow, Idaho. Buddy was a miniature Australian Shepherd. So he wasn't quite as big. Like my drover's about 100 pounds, but a miniature would be maybe about the size of maybe a Cocker Spaniel. And so they're a bit smaller, but they look exactly like the picture that I showed you. And so the information that I'm giving you today is coming from the dog's owners, and that was Pam and Jim Colbert. And they said that on October the 21st, which this is pretty important information, October 21st of this year, they found their miniature Australian Shepherd skinned. His pelt was completely removed, and they did not find it. It's gone. The couple was getting ready to go to bed for the evening. And like every single one of us that has pets, they let their dog out to go to the bathroom before going to bed. This was a 12-year-old dog. This was a dog that knew very well who its owners were, who its friends were, and how to stay away from strangers. The dog would have been more than likely to bark and carry on by encountering a stranger than to, wag his tail like a little puppy and go up and, avoid the prospect of danger. Let me go, let's see. The Australian Shepherd was less than 3 miles from where the Idaho 4 students lived. Less than 3 miles. And when you look at it, it was the shared area in the back, the woody, kind of area. So I've heard some people just sort of mention the possibility of this being connected. And I wanted to just talk about why people are making that, suggesting that possibility and what that might look like. How would it be that Buddy could have actually been the first victim of what may be a psychopathic killer, a spree killer, there near the University of Idaho? Now, Buddy was 12 years old. He was rescued from a puppy mill by his mom, Pam. And as I said, they had let him out that night as they were preparing to go to sleep. Pam and others had a fear. They called their dog. He didn't come back. They were worried about what could have possibly happened to him. And when they finally found Buddy, their fear then became horror, because what they saw specific to Buddy's death prompted them to contact the sheriff's department. They called the sheriff's department because it was so shocking. It was as if Buddy was a deer that someone had hunted, said Buddy's mother, Pam Kohberger. When they found Buddy's body, he had been cut all the way around the neck. The fur, the pelt was removed, and the fur was left on his head and his legs. It was surgically removed. Somebody took great care in preserving Buddy's beautiful coat. They did turn him over where he had been filleted as if someone was thinking of eating him. Obviously, the family was horrified. They had taken little Buddy and they had filleted him like he was a fish. They did find his collar, which was unsnapped and was laying neatly flat, but they never did find the pelt. And this was reported from Latah County Sheriff's Deputy. They sent photos to confirm. Sheriff's Deputy sent to take photos for a report confirmed Buddy's killer was human. So the simplicity and the precision with which the pelt had been removed could have only been done with human hands and a very, very, very sharp knife. Skin is your armor. It's the thing that is protecting every organ in your body from being sick, from germs being able to invade. A break in the skin is not easily achieved. It's very difficult. And so you either need a razor sharp edge on a blade or brute strength. Now then, this family, Pam and Jim, they have been living in their home for 39 years. And they had never seen anything like this happen. Little Buddy was a miniature Australian Shepherd. He was black and white. He had a few little red markings on his face and then on the paws of his legs. The one I showed was a tricolor. And here, it's so heartbreaking. Let me show you a picture of Pam and Jim. Share. And so here is Pam and Jim Kohberger, the parents of little Buddy. And there's a puppy, a picture of a puppy. There's the red markings on his paws. And then he's mostly black and white. That was his puppy picture. That's not him fully grown. And then they are showing, they're showing his, there's his collar. So sad. So I believe that Buddy may have been the first victim of what appears to now be, a psychopathic killer on the loose in Idaho. Those of you that may not have been following this, although I'm sure you have, I'll be putting up pictures of the four: Kaylee Goncalvez, Maddy Moden, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapen. I'll be putting their picture up at the end of this video for those of you that haven't quite seen it. All beautiful, all very bright, very good students, all doing quite well in college. There were connections to sororities and fraternities, 3 specifically sororities and fraternities. And there were 2 surviving roommates that were in the lower floor of the house. They were never attacked. They were not involved. It's hard to even know if they're even considered, um, witnesses, because they supposedly never woke up. Now, Kaylee Goncalvez, she was preparing. She had received a job in Austin. She was in technology, and she was very excited about her new life getting started. She wasn't supposed to be there that night. She had just gotten a new, I believe, Range Rover, I think, and was planning her move. And so she had gone back to Moscow to spend time with her best friend, Maddy Moden, and let Maddy see her new car. And then they went out for the evening to a very, very, very popular, and even some would say famous, bar that not only University of Idaho students, but many people knew of the corner bar. The photographs of it have shown this sort of modest kind of bar. Didn't really look much to it, but if you look it up, it actually was a really real. It's actually one of the more hop in, jump in places for nighttime entertainment. They boast having something like 9 televisions. They show a lot of sports. There's a lot of pool tables, and it is a really popular hangout for the locals, and then also for college students. That would be, I think, that comes back later on for a future video that I'm going to do, where we have a few people that have gone public, and they have said that they did witness Kaylee and Maddy at the bar, and they were very intoxicated, and more important, they were attracting a great deal of attention from the boys, the guys, the male persuasion. The 4 University of Idaho students, the cops believe they were killed between 3 and 4 a.m. in the early morning hours of November the 13th. The police have not released very many details at all, other than to say that it was an expansive crime scene. There was a great deal of blood, and they even said that there was red. There was a lot of red on the walls. I thought that was a strange way of describing the scene. Why, if you're law enforcement, why wouldn't you say that there was blood spatter on the walls? And that is not what they said. And so I'm a bit, I wonder. Notice I'm saying I wonder. I've not seen this anywhere else. Nobody has said it. Please don't say that I'm spreading bad information. I'm thinking out loud. Okay. I wonder if there was words or a message that was written in blood, is what I'm wondering. We know that the murder weapon was said to be a Rambo knife, a K-bar. This is a military issued knife given to Marines and SEALs. It is a straight edge on one side and a serrated edge on the other side. The blades come in different lengths, and the medical examiner was very clear in stating that this was a massive weapon, and it caused a lot of physical damage. So I want to be clear. I felt like there was a little bit too much focus on the knife. And the reason I say that is this. Yes, it is standard issue for Marines and Navy SEALs. but you can order them off of Amazon for less than $100. These weapons are not hard to come by, and more notably because they are so strong and the steel holds a really good fine razor edge. It is a favorite among hunters. If you're a hunter, you're doing big game like deer or bigger, you want to bleed the animal as soon as you can so that you can preserve the meat. And it's a strong blade. It can definitely do what you need to do. So I want to be a little careful on this. People saying, "Oh, let's go look at the ROTC kids." Maybe not. I think hunters. Can I say this? We have a great deal of military veterans in this country. We have a lot of ex-police officers that carry this type of weapon. That this is not a specialized weapon. It is a specialized weapon because of the construction. It's not specialized in terms of rare and hard to get. They're very easy to find and they're not very expensive. And so let's not point our fingers at Marines and it's an easy weapon. It'd be harder to come up with a gun than a K-bar. But I think what's important about the knife is to think about Buddy and the manner in which his pelt was removed. The fact that the killer took time to fillet this one side of him. It's almost like the killer was getting, like he was practicing with the blade. It's almost like he was enjoying or exploring the limits to what he could do with his knife. And so I thought about this a great deal from a psychological point of view. And I thought, what would be the reason for taking a pet and then being so surgical and careful, especially, don't get me wrong, this isn't 100-pound male Australian Shepherd. This is a miniature Aussie. So what would cause somebody to want to use, like in a surgical precision, wring the neck and then take the time to properly remove the skin? And there are hunters out there, or your husbands or sons, that ask them what's involved in properly removing a pelt to keep its usefulness, right? So this person was very methodical and very careful with a family pet, a pet that had been there for 12 years. I don't believe that this is someone who has been living there the whole 12 years. I think it's someone transient. I think it's someone who's come in for a few years, maybe a student, maybe a graduate student, and they have been tightly controlled for their urges and drives or fantasies. They've been tightly controlled for a long time, and something triggered them. Something got under their skin and made them feel like they couldn't keep controlling the fantasies or the urges, right? Well, there's a couple of things that it could be. Okay. And I'm going to get into some research here, just met some empirical information that's been derived in an empirical manner. I'm going to get in there in a minute, but just this global umbrella comment, two different things could have triggered the loss of control. Okay. One of them could have been something visually stimulating. If you have a person, probably highly intelligent, if you go by the FBI profile, probably white male, let's face it. If if this person had been highly controlled and they were either using distraction or fantasy to manage the internal eros drive. I hesitate to say sex because I don't think in this situation sex is not the primary motivator. Primary motivator is power. That's the exciting thing. Sex doesn't cause a climax. The power creates the climax. I don't know how many of y'all saw Mr. Brooks, the Kevin Costner movie about about a serial killer. In that movie, in one of the scenes, he's watching. He's in the person's house. He has tracked them. He has mapped out a plan. He's taken great care to plan out how he's going to manage to get into the building, do the murder, and leave the building with no one knowing. And so part of the planning part is like foreplay. That's building up the excitement, right? And I'm talking about sexual energy, the sexual excitement. It's building it up in the planning and the plotting and taking little bits of power and control away from the target without them even knowing it. Things like bumping into them, and like Mr. Brooks bumping into the victim and spilling coffee and saying, "Oh my, I'm so sorry, let me help you," and then walking away. It would get really excited knowing that he had brushed close and touched and talked with and interacted with the person that would one day be dead by his own hand. And the victim never knowing, who he was. And so they play these games, these psychopaths play these games, and it escalates and escalates and escalates. So I think either something visual triggered the guy, but I'm going on the assumption that this is a psychopathic deviant, that this is a thrill kill, that this is a guy who's plotting this kill because he's had these urges, he's been controlling them for a long time, and now he's ready. That's the one possibility. The other possibility, again, psychopathic rage, but the trigger was from being slighted, embarrassed, humiliated, put down. That's the other side. Okay, so both psychopathic in nature, both scary as hell, out of control, but two different sources of energy. Okay, so if we take into account little buddy, and he's the first victim of this psychopath. This is a guy that's been controlled for a long time, either by distracting himself, not letting his mind go to those fantasies of killing someone, or he's lost control of he can't use the distraction anymore, and now he's spending more and more time in fantasy, and pretty soon that just builds up additional drive. And so then they think, well, maybe if I just do a little killing, that will calm me and satisfy me. And so then, maybe they kill a mouse or a fish. And so each time it's a little bit more, it escalates it. But here's the important part of it. Each time they kill, yes, it's exciting. But then when they go, let's say they kill a cat, and then they go back and they try to kill the second cat or the third cat. And guess what? They're desensitized. So that where they might have gotten, excited with that first kill, the first cat, by the time they get to the second, third, or fourth, it's no longer exciting. They've escalated. They need more. We know from research, psychopathic killers are high sensation seekers. Generally, you would say that they're sexually high sexually stimulating seekers. They want to do things that are not accepted in general mainstream. They're not happy with missionary style, right? They need more. They need to do more to make it more exciting, more dangerous. Sex in public, is an early step off point, things like that. So some of these guys have even been called like sex addicts, but they're not really. It's not really the same. It's not really the same mechanism. They'll eventually graduate past the sexual the sexual sensory seeking behavior. They'll graduate from that and have to add to it. And I've got research to talk about in just a minute about that. Okay, so don't get confused as I go through this, because those are two completely different things. That a person is a psychopathic deviant. They've been controlling through distraction or fantasy, and they've lost control, and now they're escalating. That's one possibility. The other possibility is a psychopathic deviant who has more, I guess a more accurate way to say this would be what you think of as like a malignant narcissist, and that someone embarrasses or shames that psychopath, the malignant narcissist. They get embarrassed or they get shamed, and then they've got to come back and give you the what for. Okay. Probably, if you think about the sexual deviant, like you can think of Mr. Brooks, Kevin Costner in Mr. Brooks. That would be somebody that just, there's something inherently wrong mentally. Early in their life, maybe their limbic system is a bit overactive, and early in their life, their psychosexual development got intertwined with their violence. Maybe there was a parent in the home that was particularly violent, or they were watching something violent on television. Maybe they were the target of some type of offense, sex offender. And so it all gets kind of intermingled and it gets confused. And pretty soon it's not sex that causes orgasm and climax. It is power and control or destruction that will do that. That's your Mr. Brooks killer. And then the psychopathic deviant, who is more like a malignant narcissist. They've gotten their feelings hurt, and now they got to punish you. Guess who our poster boy is? That's right, Charlie Manson. He was the perfect psychopathic deviant, malignant narcissist. And why do you think I say that? Well, because he got his feelings hurt about the whole, we'll have fun until daddy takes your T-bird away, right? He thought that he was going to be a famous singer, correct? He thought that his friend from the Beach Boys, that they were going to help him become a recording artist. Most notably, the man's name was Terry Melcher. He also went by the name Terrence Jordan, but probably the best way to know of him is that his mother was Doris Day, right? So Terry Melcher was a record producer. He was also a musician, but he was a record producer, and they say that he was part of he was the most active in shaping the sound of American West Coast rock music, like the Beach Boys, that California, or like that song California Dreamin', kind of the counterculture era, the nascent counterculture era. that was actually him that created that whole movement. He was actually really good friends with Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys. And so they, everybody knows the story that Dennis Wilson befriended Charlie Manson. That I think didn't they pick them up as hitchhikers or something? But anyway, Terry Melcher was friends with Dennis Wilson, and he introduced Manson, and so that was kind of how they met. So if you think about Charlie Manson as a malignant narcissist, he eventually graduated to psychopathic killer, except his was a bit more notable because he never really lifted a finger himself. It was that he was so good at manipulating other people that he inspired others to kill in his name. But nevertheless, so Manson was this malignant narcissist that was offended when he felt like he was tricked, that Terry Melcher was going to help make him a star. And then they cut off friendship with Manson, and said, no, just kidding. We don't want to be friends with you. And so, like any good psychopathic malignant narcissist, he said, oh, well, okay. So, if you think you're going to hurt my feelings, well, here, hold my beer and watch this. And that is when he inspired his group of sex crazed, little cult to go and kill what he thought was Terry Melcher and Terry Melcher's friends. Now, that is a point of contention for those of you out there that are Manson addicts and all that. Don't get all freaked out. I'm fixing to tell you the true part of this whole thing. But basically, what I want you to remember from this is that when a malignant narcissist gets offended and their mask is torn off, then the anger and the contempt that mask has been hiding is now on display for everyone to see. The anger and the contempt is always lurking right underneath the surface, hidden by that mask. And when you take that mask off, then it can no longer be denied, right? The malignant narcissist, now, instead of denying their anger or trying to distract from their anger, now they're looking for confrontation. They feel upset. They don't like that someone has gotten the best of them, and now they're wide open and welcoming confrontation. So then once that mask is pulled off, then you begin to see the rages. When the mask was intact, the narcissist had the ability to avoid confrontation because it was instrumental. It was something that they could make a decision to do or not based on what their goals were. Once the mask is gone, confrontation now becomes the ideal. They relish confrontation. They want it. They want to act out. Think about Gabby Petito and Bryan. Once it was out in the open that he was a loser, he just fully embraced it. He was ready to let her have everything he had been hiding. He was ready to loose it, and he did. Instead of the veiled or subtle insults, put downs that you get from a veiled narcissist, now they openly just hurl insults. They can even be like taunting and boastful, like they're smiling and laughing. Yeah, you're nobody. Nobody likes you. You don't have any friends. I don't know why you think you have friends. People are lying to you. That it's no longer about hiding the insults. Now they're like enjoying it. They want to hurt people's feelings. They want to cause people financial harm. And then sadly, if that narcissistic rage becomes bad enough, if what you're dealing with is really a psychopath, then they will actually begin to look for a physical type of confrontation. They will even completely give up this pretense of trying to get along. Whereas previously, before the mask is removed, they may be like, hey, I'm upset with you, but I'm trying. How can we work this out? Let's try to meet an agreement together. But if you pull that mask off, if you reveal the narcissist that's lurking beneath, it's no longer, hey, let's work it out. It is, hey, shut the hell up. It's my way or the highway. When I say jump, you ask how high. And if not, I fully intend to hurt you. I will embarrass you. I will shame you. I will call your boss. I will call your licensing board. I will report you to an ethics board, even though I've never hired you to do any type of work for me at all. I will do whatever I need to do to cause you hurt or pain. And if I can't get to you, then I will contact your children and try to harm and hurt your children. I mean, they are hell-bent on causing pain, and there are no limits. That is a malignant narcissist. Not all malignant narcissists graduate to psychopathic deviancy. The psychopathic deviancy, it requires some level of biological, physiological dysfunction in the limbic system. For psychopaths, they generally, there are no corrective emotions like guilt or sadness or love, but there is sometimes anger, frustration that can be there. And very often that is what will actually fuel them to kill or destroy property. If these people are ready to escalate, if they've been highly controlled for quite a while, or just simply the revelation of what a lowlife they are is profound enough and they feel like they have nothing to lose, then the unraveling can be quite magnificent. Sometimes they can appear to be highly controlled, almost detached in some way. At other times, they can be really erratic and just scary in terms of the externalizing behaviors that they do. The requests are no longer made with promises of reward. Now a request is really a demand. You will do this. You will keep quiet about me, or I will release all the text messages that we ever had together. You will tell my lie and protect me, or I will contact your adult child and tell them you did XYZ. That type of demand with like a force of threat. The psychopathic deviants will take, once the mask is off, the gloves go with it. They don't care. There are no limits, and they will go do as much as they need to do to make sure that you hurt and that you are going to be just as sorry as they are. These are often relationships where we see what were previously super, super close friends will become bitter, bitter enemies. There's a lot of black and white thinking. Someone goes from being the greatest to being completely devalued into nothingness. There is either total admiration or being completely in awe of someone, and then suddenly they're devalued, or a person will suddenly say about one of their really good friends that they're really afraid of them. And you think, why would you be afraid of your best friend? Like, where is that coming from? Just trust me. I don't want to talk about it, but if they call, don't let them in the house. That's a pretty good sign somebody's aware that there's something that's just not quite right about their ex-friend. Often they've been victimized by being prevented from winning. If the psychopath, it believes that you have stopped them from achieving a goal, that you have been instrumental in lowering their social status, then they could very well embark on a campaign to utterly and completely destroy you or your parents or your best friend or your dog. There are no limits. They want to hurt you because you hurt them. It's always a game of one-upmanship with the Charlie Manson type of malignant narcissist. So Terry Melcher, Doris Day's son, music producer, forming the West Coast music sound of the Haight-Ashbury, period of time. That music producer basically told Charlie, "Hey, guess what? We're not doing your music. Sorry, but not sorry. We can't. This isn't going to work." During this period of time, Manson and the cult had been living in Dennis Wilson's house at 14,400 Sunset Boulevard after Wilson had picked up the two Manson family members, Patricia Krenwinkel and Ella Jo Bailey. He had picked them up hitchhiking, and then they introduced Wilson to Manson. Wilson and Manson actually recorded 2 songs. And for a little while, Melcher not only wanted to record some of Manson's music, but more importantly, he was thinking that he wanted to do a film. He wanted to make a movie. Remember, it's Mom's Doris Day, so he has those connections. He wanted to make a film about the cult, which they called themselves family, about the family and their hippie commune existence. And this was during the period of time of Haight and Ashbury, that this was the top of the drug culture, free love. And these, incidentally, is important because these were the tools that Manson used to manipulate and control the young people that he was bringing into the, quote, family, aka cult. There are a lot of stories about Manson that he promoted and he provoked unusual sexual practices. He didn't want emotional connection. In fact, he took steps to break apart and tear down the romantic relationships of married cult members. He wanted it to be strictly based on physical sex, like this depravity. He was training these kids to be depraved in their sexual appetites and the things they were willing to do. And what was so extraordinary about that from a psychological point of view is that he wasn't the sicko that was a part of it. He wasn't engaging in sexual activity with these kids, with the family members or a cult. He was manipulating them to do these acts of depravity as he was sitting back watching. He didn't particularly enjoy it. He wasn't particularly titillated by it. But all the time that he had spent in prison, the amount of sexual assault as a child that he had experienced, he recognized that some people could be out of control when it came to their sexual appetites. And that would give him a really, really stronghold to make someone do what he wanted to do if he could create a reliance on him for drugs and for this lifestyle of sexual depravity, and then a feeling of affiliation with the group members. You can read some of his writings and listen to some of the things where he was being interviewed by news people. I hate to say it, people, but he was very bright. He's really, really smart. And he recognized, in fact, he was probably the world's first green energy guy. He really pushed for the things that would protect us from global warming and not cutting down the trees. He's the guy. Isn't that crazy that he's like one of the most horrendous monsters in history, and we somehow have a whole political system built up around exactly what he was pushing in the 70s. Very strange. So he was using sexual depravity and deviancy among the members. He was promoting that. He was using a lot of drugs for, getting drugs for them, getting them addicted to these drugs and whatnot for them. And all of this was then used to make them do whatever he wanted them to do. And so during this period of time, him knowing Terry Melcher and Dennis Wilson, Manson was living there. When he met Terry Melcher was living at 10,050 Cielo Drive, which is where the murders happened. The LaBianca Tate murders occurred. So when Terry Melcher was hanging out with Charlie Manson and Dennis Wilson, Melcher was living at Cielo Drive with Candace Bergen, his girlfriend, and then another musician named Mark Lindsay. Manson auditioned for Melcher. Melcher declined to sign him. They were still in talks about doing the documentary, but they were at the Spawn Ranch when Manson got drunk and got into a really, really violent fight and attacked a stuntman who was also very drunk. And it was so violent, and it was such a an eye-opening and horrifying moment that was actually the catalyst for both Dennis Wilson and Terry Melcher to tell Manson, "Hey, we're done with you, man. You are way too freaky for us to hang out with." So at that point, then Melcher and Bergen moved out of the Cielo Drive home. They sold it to a guy named Rudy Altobelli, and then Rudy Altobelli leased the Cielo Drive home to Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate, who we know now was pregnant, right? So that's kind of how it all, came to be. Melcher was freaked out by the attacks. Like, he was totally and completely freaked out. Not only was Melcher freaked out, but there were other notable celebrities that also got really frightened during this period of time. And they went into hiding. One of them was, oh shoot, what's his name? I've forgotten their names now. My poor brain. What's his name? The lady that starred in Rosemary's Baby, she believes that, was it Lily Tomlinson? She believed that she was actually next. She said that she believed that the Manson family would come for her. And then Frank Sinatra went into hiding because he was so convinced that they were going to come from him too. So it's kind of weird when you really get into the history of that period of time and everything that was going on in California. Charlie Manson, man, he was connected. He knew some big names and some big people. Anyway, nevertheless, so Manson, there's a little bit of argument about how they came to be at the Cielo address, but Tex, well, I don't want to get into a whole Manson history thing. So anyway, Melcher was convinced that they made a mistake and that they were actually thinking that they were going to be killing he and Candace Bergen. Later on, during the course of the trial, though, there were people like Susan Atkins was one of the most beloved of Manson's girls. She said that they knowingly went to the Cielo Ranch house, and that the attacks were actually designed to scare Terry Melcher. That Manson did not want Terry Melcher to die because he and Wilson were still the only connection or possibility that he had for getting a record deal. So he surely wouldn't get the record deal if he murdered Melcher. So they murdered instead the people at Cielo Drive. And then I don't know if he thought, in his weird depraved mind, I don't know if he thought that that was going to force Melcher into giving him a recording contract, perhaps. But nevertheless, she testified. Susan Atkins testified a couple of different trials that no, we absolutely knew that we were killing Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate, but that was instrumental. We did it because we wanted to make Melcher scared. And then, like I said, Frank Sinatra, Frank Sinatra was absolutely convinced that they were coming from him. And then the lady that did Rosemary's Baby, she was really afraid too. All right. So there was, hold on just a minute. I've got a dry throat. Hold on. Okay. So the Charlie Manson killer, psychopathic deviant, this is the guy who, you hurt his feelings. This is the malignant narcissist. You pull his mask off. Then he has no further reason to hide that he's a psycho, and then they act on it. There's hell to pay if you cross paths with them, right? But if we consider that Buddy, the miniature Australian Shepherd, if we consider that he is the first victim of what is the University of Idaho's psychopathic deviant, then it's possible that this is a guy who has simply been really messed up and has been fighting his urges for a long time, and something triggered him. Like I said, perhaps something visual triggered him, and now he's thinking he's ready to graduate to something physical. Rather than using distraction or using fantasies, he's now ready for something visual. Now then, so sexual sensation seeking is a big part of, obviously, psychopathic violence, regardless of which avenue the psychopath travels. Sex is the stimulation or foreplay. Murder and power brings about the orgasm or climax. The escalating fantasy provides an organized and provides for an organized and increasing drive for violence. And then the result is a progressive desensitization during each step of violence. And for a lot of guys, depending on if they've been much older and they've been really controlling it for a long time, then it can actually escalate very quickly. It's like a dam bursting. They hold it in, they fantasize, they distract, they fantasize, they distract, and then they finally get their first little small taste of violence. It can take decades to get to that first taste of violence. And then it is like a dam bursting. Even though they are progressing in a very stepwise fashion, they're taking a step and they're having a cooling off period. They're taking a step and they're having a cooling off period. They're taking a step with a cooling off period. Even though that part continues, once violence is achieved, then those steps become much faster, and each period of desensitization is more intense. The goal is not sex. The goal is climax as a result of the ultimate act of power. High sexual sensation seeking is viewed as one component of an antisocial lifestyle. The sexual, like with Charlie Manson, he was not acting on these sexual behaviors. He was setting up the environment to provoke the kids to do those things. And it was done with the goal of controlling them. Again, that ultimate attainment of ultimate power and control over another human being. So this high sexual sensation seeking as part of the antisocial lifestyle is more prevalent in psychopaths, or let's just call them offenders. Offenders who, if the offender is attracted, it's acting out on both adult and children, what's called polymorphic. There are other conditions, but I don't want to talk about them on my channel. But if there's multiple classes of people that the offender is acting upon, then it is more likely that you see high sexual sensation seeking. There are plenty of psychopaths who are acting only on adults. Okay, if that is the case, you're less likely to see the high sexual sensation seeking, although it can be there. It's not mutually exclusive, but for the most part, and I don't know if you guys want to look it up, this is Michaud and Prue, 2009, Scorvan et al. In 2010. Opportunistic behavior during crime commission is one of the top distinguishing features of age-specific or crossover offenders. And again, this is consistent with high sensation-seeking tendencies in a polymorphic offender. The finding shows that there is higher rates of psychopathy in polymorphic offenders. Now, the reason, and if you care of looking it up, you can look up Scrovan, Huss, and Scalora, and you can look up Porter, 2000. In a study by Brown in 2015, he investigated the relationship between psychopathy and sexual polymorphism, and showed that crossover sex offenders score very, very high on the affective interpersonal components of psychopathy, as well as the impulsive antisocial lifestyle components of psychopathy compared to child sex offenders. So the reason that I wanted to comment on this and point it out is this. There are violent and aggressive offenders who are not acting out on children. And that is something that gets all messed up in these discussions, is you think you're looking for I bet this was someone who was abused in childhood or whatever. Not necessarily. I'm going to do another video about another murder. A young woman in college whose murderer was a neighbor. And he actually came out and began doing interviews about her disappearance and murder, and he was the murderer all along. He had no history at all of any type of aggressive, violent behavior. So don't get all caught up about this could be someone who is newly triggered and they're now acting out their deviancy. And it can escalate very quickly. The longer they control it, the longer they hold it tight, they're able to control it. They're able to focus the acting out on something highly restricted and small, or they use distraction, or they can sometimes use acts of self-harm to distract. The longer they go through that, the older they are when they finally act out on that first taste of violence, boy, it can escalate very quickly. Very quickly it can escalate. So that brings up, let me make one more comment about impulsivity. I think impulsivity could be a big part of this too. Impulsivity has been empirically identified as a risk factor for problematic sexual behaviors in adults related to infidelity, risky sexual behavior, sexual coercion. Impulsivity it can be conceptualized as a fairly stable interpersonal characteristics, like we got a lot of people identified as ADHD or whatever, where impulsivity is a big part of presenting symptoms. But that this tendency toward impulsivity that is stable and it's really apparent from childhood, on up, it often serves as the foundation for reckless and inconsiderate actions. So if this is a person that was diagnosed with ADHD in childhood and they've had primarily externalizing behaviors, then maybe they never learned how to control some of these urges. And like I said, the longer as they're aging and they're trying to keep their fantasies or whatnot in check, they know that it's wrong. They know that it could end up them losing their freedom or worse. And it's the ultimate push-pull. They want to get out there and do the deviancy, and yet they also have self-preservation because they're narcissistic, right? Their self-preservation drive is very powerful too. So they live in a constant state of turmoil, frustration. Many of them, I think we use the term incels. A lot of these people, they just don't understand how to have a normal relationship with someone their age. And so many of them can be very lonely. Some of them have families. Some of them are married and do well. You can't look at a person and say lifestyle is going to determine their aggression or psychopathy. You're really looking at individual traits, the individual behaviors that they're doing. So high sexual sensation seeking would be important. Not necessarily that there would be child stuff involved. Just it could be something like being part of a swingers club. That could be something. Or impulsivity is very often associated with psychopathic rage and aggression. Let's see. I was going to look. The delay discounting task and the stop signal. That's going to be too much for me to talk about. I don't want to talk about all that. Okay. Not all sex abusers are impulsive, and not all psychopathic deviants are sexual. Okay. They're not all. Again, remember what I said at the beginning of this. The sex can be stimulating, but the orgasm and climax is power. So it's not the fact that there was no type of sexual assault. That again leads me closer to this idea of this is an emerging serial killer. That's my opinion. Individuals who sexually assault at least one adult woman would be more impulsive than those who exclusively attack children only. Okay, so high impulsivity for whoever did this in Idaho, I would expect to see a history of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder would be my guess. 82% of rapists, this was Scovron et al. In 2010 and Shakori and Ben David in 2015, Relu in 2015. They all came up, about 82, 83% of rapists had committed opportunistic sexual aggression with low levels of offense planning. All right. Done with that. Sorry, got a lot of notes on this one. All right. So my position, my working hypothesis is that little Buddy is the first victim of the Idaho 4 killer. I think he's the first. Now, earlier in this, I talked about a visual trigger, right? And research shows that a lot of these spree or serial killers like Ted Bundy, that these are highly visual people. They're driven by visual stimulus for violence or other things, not just violence. That gets me to television. Some of you are going to cringe. You're going to say, oh my God, Jules, don't go here. Video games don't cause violence. Television doesn't cause violence. Okay, but hear me out. Okay. Now, Jeffrey Dahmer. Okay. What do we know about Jeffrey Dahmer? Well, we know that he started, he was called the Milwaukee Cannibal, and he started his butchery by attacking animals, dogs and cats to be specific. This is such a common theme for the serial killers, these people that are psychopathic deviants that really are different animals than we are. They're not like us. They don't process emotions. They don't live the types of lives that you and I live. They traditionally, most of them are practicing on animals first, right? There's all kinds. I mean, we got Ted Bundy, we got Jeffrey Dahmer, BTK had some trouble with animals. Robert Thompson, John Venables was mutilating rabbits. In fact, he went from rabbits to then a toddler to then, others. There are all sorts of people, serial killers from all around the world, Europe, Romania, all with notable, documented, they started with animals. Nicholas Cruz, we just saw the culmination of his trial. He is the shooter at Marjory Stoneman Douglas, where he shot 34 people, killed 17 students and teachers. He started with killing and torturing squirrels and chickens, potbelly pig of a neighbor, rabbits. He skinned, listen, he was skinning lizards. This is very interesting when you consider what happened to Buddy, right? Jeffrey Dahmer, he admits that he tortured animals. There's one episode where he had given some tadpoles to a teacher. It was like a gift. And the teacher gave them to another kid to take home. I guess the teacher didn't want to deal with them or something. And so Dahmer sneaks in. He pours more motor oil into the water so that, the tadpoles then suffocate and die. He also took live fish and cut them open so he could see the insides while they were still alive. He too, Jeffrey Dahmer, was notorious. Wherever he moved, neighborhood dogs and cats went missing. He was decapitating the carcass of a dog. He put it on a stick, just like the other guy, whatchamadoodle. From the time that he decapitated the dog, it was only 3 years later that he began killing people. Okay? So this connection between animal assault, skinning an animal, cutting the head off an animal, to ultimately attacking a human being, it's It's documented. We've seen it. A guy, Peyton Gendron, who was, this was like in Buffalo, New York. He had murder charges, probably mafia kind of guy. He killed a ton of people, 10 people. Just 2 months before the shooting, he was killing a cat. Took a hunting knife, cut the throat of the cat. He said he posted a photograph of the cat online, and the caption of it said that he felt blank when he was doing the killing. And in the picture where he's got this cat, his own face is just covered in the spray of the blood. And the caption says, "I felt blank during the killing." Nothing. He was blank. He was empty. He was numb. It was there. There was nothing there. Edward Kemper. He killed his own grandparents. He killed his mother. He killed his mother's best friend. And he killed some college-age girls. But when Kemper was 10 years old, he took the family cat alive and buried it. He decapitated the cat. He took the head and put it on a stick, just like who? Yeah, Dahmer. Why did the poor little cat at age 10, why did Kemper do this to the poor cat? Because he thought that the cat loved his sister more than he loved Kemper. So there was hell to pay. Dennis Rader, blind torture kill, BTK killer of the 70s. Same thing. When he was a child, he had violent sexual fantasies that involved bondage. So he would kill dogs and cats, and then he would hang them and strangle them and act out bondage on these animals. When he's a child, when he's a kid, he was also killing chickens. He got really excited about the blood from the chickens. He later became a dog catcher, and there were lots of complaints against him. Why? Because dogs kept going missing. Rader ended up committing 10 murders between 1974 and 86. One a year. But there were a lot of dead animals in between each of those dead human beings. So the list of these people, these psychopaths, we could keep on going on. There is no question the established link between mutilation and death of an animal and acting out murder on human beings. I think that's one of the reasons why Chris McDonough was so pointed in talking about Barry Morphew, and that Barry had this pet raccoon that he ended up killing, to sell the pelt. It's just not comfortable. Our pets are like our babies. They're like another member of our family. And just because our pet becomes inconvenient doesn't mean that we, do horrible things with it, right? So the connection is definitely there. So bear with me, and I'm just about finished with this video, but here comes the big part. If you manage to stick through all of this gruesome death and, it's an awful, terrible, terrible topic. Here's my point. Okay, keep an open mind about this. You have Barry. Not Barry, Buddy, the little dog, the miniature Australian Shepherd. He's lived there at his location since he came home with his mom and dad, and he's a 12-year-old dog. He's been there a long time. He's let out in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and he doesn't come back. This dog is 12 years old. That's his home. As well as I do, we let our dogs out. They go to their preferred location. They use the bathroom. They turn around and they run right back in. Just about every dog I've ever known does that. Somebody knew that little Buddy was going to be let out, and approximately what time. I believe that. They were waiting. This was in the same strip of houses as the Idaho 4. It provides great cover. There's plenty of woods. There's a road that backs up to it, gives you good access. And there's no telling how long something could have been watching little Buddy and figuring out the daily habits and schedules of little Buddy. Less than 3 miles away are the Idaho 4. Again, cover of darkness, cover of trees, immediate access to a roadway, watching, planning, waiting. Could have been a neighbor. Maybe it was a neighbor, someone who could see into the windows of the kids, knowing what nights are they most likely partying, what nights are there only a few people there, when are they more likely to have a test, or is there ever anybody there alone? Maybe these were girls that the psychopathic killer wanted to talk to, wanted to have a date with perhaps. But those are the kind of girls that wouldn't give this guy the time of day. Think about Elliot Rogers. Elliot would tell you, oh, I'm quite the catch. I'm handsome. I have a beautiful car. I have lots of money. I have a famous dad. What's not to love about me? I don't know, Elliot, you're a psychopathic degenerate, and all the girls are picking up on that, perhaps. And he was angry with every woman in the world because he could not go out with a pretty girl like he thought he deserved. Is that what happened? Was there someone in the local area, someone nearby, someone that could just walk down the road and look up into the window and see Maddy or see Kaylee or maybe Xana? Looking through the windows, just getting hungrier, wanting so desperately for somebody to love him and hating them because they didn't. Was he sitting back in the woods, watching and planning and plotting, taking note? Is it Monday night or Thursday night? What time do the lights go out? Do they go to bed at 10? Do they go to bed at 5 a.m.? Are these party girls? Or are these girls going to graduate school? Just patiently waiting. Maybe that's how the killer ended up finding Buddy. Maybe the killer's back there watching the girls, waiting and wondering and thinking, should I do this? I've been fighting this thing my whole life. Been having these urges my whole life, these fantasies my whole life, and I've never acted on a human being. Am I ready? Do I hate these girls enough? Are they pretty enough? Have they embarrassed me at some point? Did they refuse to say hello to me when I smiled at them? And then you hear fur mom, Buddy, come home. And that's how Buddy became the focus of this psychopathic rage? Maybe. So there's another possibility for Buddy. The knife. A K-bar is a pretty intimidating piece of equipment. If you're not a hunter, if you're not a Marine, if you're not somebody that's ever used one before and comfortable with what to do with it, maybe you want to practice with it. Maybe you're really getting off and excited about what you're planning to do, but now comes, well, how am I going to do it? Am I going to shoot them? No, it's too much noise. Too much chance that my guns can be traced back to me or my dad or my family. But a knife would do it. A knife could do it. So you easily order a knife. Maybe go to another city and order it. Have it go to a post office box. But now you got to use it, don't you? Now you got to figure out what it feels like. Is that what was happening? Was this practice? I don't know. We know that Jeffrey Dahmer filleted some people, and freeze the meat so he could cook with it later. We know Jeffrey Dahmer's earliest kills were animals, dogs. We know that. So was that the visual trigger? Maybe it wasn't the girls at all. Maybe no one disrespected the killer at all. Maybe it was Netflix and chill. Maybe it was grab a bowl of popcorn and plop down on the sofa alone to watch the newest Dahmer series. And there it was. Everything that you had been experiencing as the killer was being acted out on the screen right in front of your very eyes. And what happens to a fantasy in those situations? Was this guy watching Dahmer week after week after week after week, no longer now able to use distraction, actually embracing his fantasies, escalating, completely excited at the idea? Ordering that knife would have been a moment of great titillation. Or if you're already a hunter. Because it seems like to me that what happened in Idaho so far has had a fairly parallel story to Jeffrey Dahmer and some of the other killers. Let's think about if I make the case that Buddy was the first murder victim and that this guy, this psychopath, was triggered by the visual cues that he saw in the Dahmer movie or series. And it grew, the urges became too big, too great. He lost complete control of them at that point because it was so real. The stuff on the whole Dahmer thing was so real. And one of the problems that I had with the whole Dahmer series is this. They really highlighted how impotent the cops were. They really sent this message in, not that it's real life, but that in the movie, the series, it was almost like the cops were secondary, that they weren't even a factor, that Dahmer didn't have to be particularly bright or brilliant or smart. The cops just didn't care, or they didn't notice, or they were dumb or something. What happens if the only reason you're not acting on your psychopathic rage, your bloodlust, is because you have a fear of going to prison? And you sit and watch 8 episodes of Dahmer where the cops are just, you got neighbors begging the cops, pleading with the cops. Hell, these cops not only got called in to help, but they went and hunted down the poor little kid passed out in the road and brought him back and gave him back to Dahmer. What message is that sending to the psychopath in, budding? Not yet killing, but so hungry to start. And so then Buddy falls into the path of this killer, becomes the first victim. It seems to me that he was very excited. It seems to me that he did the whole skinning, thing. But then something made him fillet the dog. Something made him fillet it. Did he think he was going to take the meat? Was he completely wrapped up in the Dahmer fantasy? And he thought, I think I'll take this and eat this? Maybe Pam yelling out the back door stopped him. Maybe he was startled. Maybe there was something that happened that shook him out of that fantasy. And he said, oh my God, what am I thinking? And he ran. Otherwise, what was the purpose of filleting one side of the animal? I think his fantasy was interrupted. I think he was playing out a Dahmer moment in his head. What he had seen on the screen. He was into the moment, and something snapped him out of it. Now he's got a taste for blood. Now he's done the killing. He knows what it feels like, the knife in his hand. He knows what it is. And he's sitting at his window and he's looking out at those girls every moment, coming and going day after day, coming and going day after day, knowing they would never give him the time of day. And he's smarter than them. He's smarter than them. He's better than them. He's destined for greatness. And what are they? They're just a bunch of little party people in their little party house. How dare they? So I think that's one possibility. I think that is one possibility. I think there's some rumor, I guess we can call it rumor, that they saw Ethan. The people that came the next day for the food, they saw Ethan first. That makes me think Ethan was fighting him. Is that why the girls were calling Jack? There was a fight going on. The killer was surprised that there was a man in the house. What if he went into the house when everybody left to go party? He'd been watching a long time. The door's cracked for the dog to go in and out. All he has to do is slip in and find himself a closet. And he never counted on a man coming back to the house. So he would have been the first. Just because the kids were found the girls were found in their beds, it doesn't mean that that's where they were when it happened. He could, once he did what he did to Ethan, he could have ordered them where to go. And they would have gone. We don't really know how long this whole thing played out. We know there was music playing. We don't know. The only thing that we do know is that he left their house before the sun came up. And the reason we know that is because the coroner told us so, or the medical examiner told us. And I think that was factored in because there's cameras that they would have picked up somebody leaving the house in the daylight. But we don't really know how long. It could have been something that lasted 1, 2, 3 hours long. We don't know. Now, what would a guy like this, a psychopathic deviant that had been controlling these urges, and is a newly budding serial killer, first act of real violence? Buddy, I would think would be the first act of violence, but so the murders of the 4 would be the second acts of violence. Well, there's no corrective emotion in these guys, right? So there would not be any guilt. There would not be any sadness, but there would be what? Exhilaration. There would be a sense of empowerment. There would be the ultimate sense of control, but only for a while, because eventually now it's all those drives are going to fire back up and he's going to get uncomfortable again. Okay. But in the immediate days and weeks after the murders, this guy would have been feeling really great. Maybe even hard to control the smile on his face. And he might feel so good and excited. He might want to get, close to the crime again. He might. How did they catch Richard Allen? Richard Allen presented himself on the trails that day. And they went back. They started it. The search, the investigators, the detectives started over at square one. They said, let's rework this. Let's start over. Let's go through one witness at a time, one person at a time. And there was Richard. Boom. So did this guy come up and say, I saw this, or I saw that, or I didn't see this, or maybe did he go to maybe he got himself in front of a camera. Maybe he got interviewed. Maybe because we know how the mainstream media is. If you do one interview, then they'll all call you because you're one of the few people that's willing to talk about it, right? Most of us would say, no comment. Don't get me involved in this circle. No. But maybe you're the kind of person that you would love to be interviewed about something that you don't know anything about because you're just a neighbor after all. How would you know anything at all? In fact, you know nothing and you do 3 or 4 or 5 interviews. My goodness. You might be feeling very powerful, correct? Maybe. Would the psychopathic deviant in this, theory, would this person be upset that people had left the town? That all the college students would have been scared that the college sanctioned, go home. We'll finish the course or the semester online, or we'll just redo the semester, or we'll just give you the grade you got, or whatever, however the college decides to do it. And they send all the kids home. They say, we can't have you here. We cannot ensure your safety right now. If you want to go home, go home. You have our blessing. So the college, empties. The town empties. Would the psychopathic killer be happy about that or upset? I think he would be upset. I think he wants to see the fear. I think hearing people talk about the killer, I think that would get him sexually aroused. I think looking at the people that were frightened, I think he would love the feeling that he caused that. He would like that. Everybody going home? He doesn't like it. He doesn't like it. Nope. Because that was not his decision. This is his game. This is his town. He's taking control now. And guess what else he's doing? He's listening to this video. He's listening to this video. He's listening to Plunder's videos. He's listening to any and everything that is being put out on mainstream media or YouTube or TikTok. He's watching. He's watching, and he likes it for a little while. But he is angry. He is angry that all the kids went home. And he's sloppy. The cops have said it. The cop said he's sloppy. Of course he's sloppy. It was the first time he acted out. He made mistakes. Most serial killers start out with one first victim. They learn from their mistakes, just like Dahmer did, just like Bundy. But then each time they get a little bit, they learn a little more, and pretty soon cops can't catch them. You got, Golden State Killer, 20 some odd years, right? Not this guy. He was dumb. He was stupid. He made some really bad mistakes. And they're going to catch him. They're going to catch him. I think they're going to catch him before he has a chance to hurt anybody else. I think he's scared, but he's upset and angry that his joy was taken away from him too soon. And that's going to cause him to make a mistake, I think. All right. These are only theories of mine. These are not based on anything that's been reported by the police or the FBI or anybody else. Please don't spread this and say, oh, she said this or that. It's a lie. No, I'm owning it. These are only my ideas and my thoughts and my opinions only. Okay? I am just thinking out loud. All right? Okay. So the next, my next video on the Idaho 4 will not be a trigger for madness. It will be the Charlie Manson type of psychopath, the malignant narcissist who gets his feelings hurt. And I will present my theory about that possibility. And maybe end up being next weekend, or when I'll be free Wednesday. I might be able to do it Wednesday afternoon. All right. We're going on 2 hours of nothing but talking, and I got to put an end to this. I will be premiering this later on tonight. I hope that I spoke freely. I have put protections. Nobody under the age of 18 can watch the video. Because it is very gruesome and graphic, and I apologize for that. And I appreciate it. If you manage to stay the whole hour and 43 minutes, you're a trooper, and I appreciate it. So thank you very much. Of course, this video will not be monetized in any way, shape, form, or fashion. So next time, I go live, if you want to leave $1 or $2 super chat, I would appreciate it. All right. Y'all have a good day. See you later. Bye. Oh, I guess I could do my little way too much talking, right?
We will do mean things, and we will do them in style.